When giant aliens invade Earth, a group of scientists must find a way to survive while their country is under attack. Today we will recap the story of the movie, War of the Worlds, The Attack, from 2023. In England, 3 young astronomers are in a forest with the aim of tracking a meteorite that has fallen to Earth. Along the way, Herbert spots a creature running through the trees and goes to investigate. Then, the other 2 youngsters realize that he has disappeared and go back to look for him. Meanwhile, the young man is walking through the forest with a flashlight in his hands looking for the monster, and when he comes across his friends, he gets a big fright. At this point, Herbert is convinced that this creature is nothing more than a figment of his imagination, so the trio decides to continue their journey in search of the meteorite. As they pedal along the trail, the young man decides to expound on his theory and says that what they saw fall to Earth was not a piece of rock, but a Martian ship. Upon hearing this, Ogie states that there is no life on Mars, and if there ever was a species residing on this planet, it was extinguished thousands of years ago. When they reach a certain point in the forest, Hannah informs them that the GPS has stopped working and the trio decide to continue the search the next morning. As it is already very late, Herbert suggests that his friends spend the night at his mother's house, which is not far away. Luckily, they decided to call off the hunt, as a creepy, tentacled creature was watching them closely. The next morning, Hannah and Herbert use a horn to wake Ogie and end up making the young man furious. Over breakfast, Herbert learns that her mother is going to visit his uncle, who lives in the next town. Ellie tries to convince her son to accompany her on this trip, as, since Herbert's father passed away, Tom has always supported them. However, even though he knows his uncle is ill, the young man refuses to visit him and says he will be too busy with his work. When she realizes that the woman was upset about what happened, Hannah decides to go and talk to her friend and finds out that Herbert's father was also an astronomer. The young man treasures a walkie-talkie he received as a gift when he was a child, and Ogie says devices like that have become completely obsolete in the internet age. Minutes later, the 3 friends sit around the table to eat some pancakes while listening to Ellie tell that she heard an intriguing news that morning. According to her, the newspaper gave the exact location of the meteorite that fell to Earth the night before. Immediately, the astronomers return to the forest and soon discover that the site is surrounded by curious onlookers, who have come there to see the extraterrestrial rock fragment. When they finally find what they were looking for, the youngsters realize that the object actually resembles a spaceship and try to evade the police to get closer to it. Now that he's a few meters away from that mysterious object, Herbert discovers that there's heat coming out of it and realizes that instead of being a giant rock, the thing is made of metal. Suddenly, a floodgate opens and the youngsters spot a bizarre creature inside. In addition to having several tentacles, the monster begins to emit a dark mist around its body and Herbert is hypnotized by it. However, when a policeman approaches, the floodgate closes again and the scientists are expelled from the site. They are about to be arrested for trespassing in a restricted area when Dr. Stint, a renowned astronomer, shows up and claims to have sent them to investigate the meteorite. At that moment, Hannah tells her that this could be the beginning of an alien invasion. The doctor then intends to call for reinforcements to help in the investigation, but before she could ask for the help of other scientists, the ship opens and a gigantic creature comes out of it. Seeing the humans trying to escape, the monster begins its attack and eliminates its victims with a laser beam, which pulverizes their bodies instantly. During the attack, the 3 friends manage to escape and hide in the forest while Hannah uses her camera to capture images of the extraterrestrial. When the creature leaves, they grab their bikes and pedal away from the forest. It's not long before the trio are back in town and then spot a new meteorite falling to Earth. At this point, Herbert realizes that each of those objects is actually an alien ship, and very soon, countless Martians will be scattered across the planet. When they arrive at Ellie's house, the young man finds a note left by the woman and discovers that his mother has already gone to Leatherhead to visit Tom. Upon being notified of the invasion, the Air Force sends some planes to fight the aliens, but Herbert doesn't believe the military will be able to resolve this situation. In order to follow the news about the attack, Ogie turns on the TV and the trio sees an interview with an angry priest, who blames humanity for everything that is happening, as if those monsters were sent to punish humans for their sins. Suddenly, the TV signal is cut off and Herbert decides to call his mother as he is worried about her. However, the cell phones are not working either. Ogie and Hannah's parents are out of the country, so for now, they are not at any risk. Because Earth's gravity is almost 3 times that of Mars, the aliens are moving slowly. This means that, so far, only the English population is in danger. But if nothing is done, the entire human species could be extinct. As all the satellites have stopped working and there is nowhere else to go, the astronomers decide to stay in the house, while hoping that the army can fight off the aliens. Hours later, Hannah is drinking water in the kitchen when she spots something moving in the garden and goes to warn her friends about the possible threat. When he realizes there are people inside the house, Ben comes out from behind the bushes and claims to be an army gunner. At this point, Herbert decides to offer the soldier shelter and discovers that he is the only survivor of his platoon. After going to the bathroom to splash some water on his face, the man manages to calm down a bit and tells us that he survived by sheer luck, as he fell into a ditch just as the laser beam hit his companions. Despite being unharmed, Ben is completely terrified and advises the young people to leave the city, as this place is the epicenter of the attack. The soldier doesn't believe the army will be able to contain the alien threat, having seen up close an entire unit wiped out in a single attack. At this point, Herbert decides to go find his mother in Leatherhead, and his friends say they will be by his side on this journey. As the phones are out of signal, the only way to keep in touch with some military unit to follow up on the lower risk areas is through a walkie-talkie. Luckily, Herbert has the device he got from his father in childhood, and through it Ben manages to talk to another soldier, who informs him that the road to Leatherhead is crawling with Martians. Before hanging up, Fred advises the group not to hitch a ride with fuel-powered vehicles, as the smell attracts the aliens' attention. So the trio decide to use bicycles to take an alternative route to the neighboring town, and Ben accompanies them, hoping to find other military troops he intends to ally himself with. After filling their backpacks with food, the group starts their journey and spots an alien destroying the city a few kilometers away. So they head the other way. Further along the road, they meet two soldiers who advise the group not to go that way. The lieutenant says all residents of surrounding towns have been evacuated to London, as the city has bunkers that offer protection against any surface attack. The man then states that on the other side of the bridge, the group will meet police officer Marvin, who will provide a boat so they can cross. When they arrive at the site, Ben joins the other soldiers while the three friends get in line to get a boat. Minutes later, the man returns and informs them that he has secured a private boat for them. However, just as the trio enter the vessel, a Martian approaches and begins to exterminate all the humans on site. At that moment, some army aircraft approach and, through a joint attack, manage to bring down the monster. Believing they are saved, the survivors celebrate the soldiers' victory, but then new creatures approach and destroy the helicopters. Once again, the scientists must flee for their lives and hide in the forest until nightfall. After a long walk, they return to the river and use the boat to cross. A few hours later, Ogie suggests that the trio find a shelter for the night, otherwise they will all freeze before they reach London. So they stop the boat on the riverbank and walk through the forest until they find a guy lost in the woods. That man, in fact, is the priest the young people saw on TV, and when he meets the astronomers, he claims that this will be the end of the human race. According to the churchman, humanity has turned its back on God, and for that it is being punished. For thousands of years, people have ravaged the planet and destroyed all resources to satisfy their selfish whims. Because of this, the species must be annihilated in order for the other land creatures to continue living. However, even after hearing the priest's speech, Herbert stands by his decision to survive at any cost and asks for his help in finding a shelter. Then, the religious informs that there are some houses a few meters away, where young people can spend the night. At that point, the man decides to accompany them, and within minutes the group arrives in a village. When he finally manages to get to shelter, the priest gathers all the food they find on the spot and refuses to share it with those young sinners. Furious, Ogie decides to confront him and claims that the priest is a hypocrite for calling them sinners, and refuses to share the food, as the Bible commands. When he is contradicted, the fanatic takes a knife and threatens the young people. According to the man, it is not God's will for him to help those young people, as they are the reason humanity is under attack. When he realizes that his friends' lives are in danger, Herbert tries to disarm the priest, but ends up being knocked down and narrowly losing his throat. Frightened, the trio come to the conclusion that it's better to go cold turkey in the woods than stay in there with a lunatic, and Ogie informs them that they are leaving. However, the man forces them to stay in that house and says that God has not yet decided what their fate will be. Since he can't leave that house, Herbert takes the opportunity to learn about that priest's history and finds out that he lost his wife to cancer a few years ago. Shortly afterwards, his daughter perished, and finally, when the Martians arrived on the planet, his youngest son was wiped out before his eyes. The priest says that at that moment, he finally understood his purpose on Earth, and all the suffering he went through was necessary so that he can now save countless souls. Hours later, everyone gathers around a fireplace and Herbert thinks up a plan to eliminate his enemy while he sleeps. At this time, the young man hears a noise coming from outside and discovers that a Martian is approaching that location. Suddenly, the priest wakes up and is convinced that it was those young men who attracted the creature. Furious, he starts screaming and ends up attracting the attention of the monster, which breaks in through the window with one of its tentacles and captures the man. Quickly, the young people hide so as not to become the next victims and manage to avoid the attack. The next morning, they hear a voice trying to communicate through the walkie-talkie and discover that Ben is alive. The man then reveals his location and asks the trio to go find him. After checking the route on a map, the astronomers walk towards the forest and, minutes later, find Ben. The gunner guides his friends to his camp and hands them some guns so they can defend themselves. After everything he has seen in the last few hours, Ben has come to the conclusion that living underground is the best way for humanity to continue existing. Martians are increasingly gaining a foothold on the planet, and not even the most technological weapons have been able to exterminate them. Ever since they arrived on the planet, aliens have been looking for conditions to reproduce and increase the number of their kind in order to populate the planet. Now, they are using human bodies as fertilizer for their eggs. Upon hearing this, Herbert decides to join the fight against these monsters, for he knows that if these eggs hatch, the entire world's army will stand no chance against these monsters and it will be the end of humanity. Once again, his friends decide to follow him and Ben joins them in this battle. When they arrive in London, the group finds almost no one in the city, as everyone is either sheltered in underground hideouts or has made a dash out of the country. The aliens walk the streets as they exterminate what's left of the population, including the soldiers trying to fight them. While Herbert and Hannah approach the nest for more information, Ben and Ogie remain hidden in the forest, keeping an eye out for the Martians. Suddenly, a creature approaches the ship and throws the body of a woman inside. She is then incinerated and some tentacles scatter her ashes over the eggs. After watching this macabre scene, the pair contact Ben and ask him and Ogie to find them, as the group needs to leave that place immediately. Just then, a tentacle approaches and Ogie is captured. Immediately, the young man's friends run to save him and Ben starts a chase. He knows he needs to rescue his partner before the creature throws him into the ship, so he starts shooting to get its attention. When he notices the soldier's presence, the Martian uses one of his tentacles to wrap around his body and Ben rips the pin out of a grenade to blow him up. So the soldier sacrifices himself so that Ogie can survive, and, as a bonus, he even manages to take an enemy with him. Then Hannah and Herbert approach and the three friends run away from the nest. While looking for a shelter to hide, they are chased by another monster and Hannah finds a passage to the city sewer. Despite not liking this idea at all, Ogie ends up entering the hideout and the young people decide to spend the night there, as their enemies have already dominated the surface. While trying to rest to face yet another battle the next morning, Herbert wonders how his mother is doing, as he still doesn't know if she managed to survive at all. In an attempt to console him, Hannah hugs him and affirms that, whatever happens, they will remain together. Hours later, the trio wakes up and the young woman realizes that there is no longer any noise coming from the surface. So she suggests that her friends go up to investigate, and in doing so, the trio discover that there is no movement in the city. Both the Martians and the military have disappeared. So they rush into the forest to investigate what may have happened during the night and find an eliminated alien on the ground. After throwing a rock at the creature, Ogie sees that it remains motionless, so Herbert decides to approach. Just then, they spot another alien in agony and realize that the monster will soon perish. Seeing their dream come true, the young people wonder why this is happening, as apparently something has made the Martians very sick. Suddenly, Dr. Stint appears next to some military personnel and states that she is very happy to hear that her students managed to survive the attack. When Hannah asks what happened to those monsters, the woman explains that humanity was about to lose the war when something great happened. Although they were able to fend off any attacks from the military, the Martians were not prepared to measure forces with Mother Nature. The bacteria that live in perfect harmony with the human body were not so harmless to the aliens, who ended up being contaminated by them. In the end, the world was saved by microorganisms. At this point, the young people are invited to follow the soldiers, who are now engaged in a mission to gather the survivors. After reuniting with her students, Dr. Stint receives a call and the sergeant asks her to pass the walkie-talkie to Herbert. Through the device, the young man is finally able to talk to his mother and discovers that she is still alive. The woman informs him that, now that all the aliens have been shot down, she is on her way home and arranges to meet her son there. After receiving this beautiful news, the three friends celebrate the fact that they managed to survive together, despite all the difficulties they faced. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.